Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Westworld, another great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, we finally get to see, okay, so here's William. This is what he's been up to. Oh, he's basically been having a mental breakdown since season 2's finale. Basically, because it seems like after the whole, because that's what I was wondering, because obviously, if we remember where William's story ended, I mean, obviously there's a whole thing of him being found and kind of getting attended to, I think was the last thing we saw of him. But prior to that, it was like him running into his daughter, and it's like, oh, he thought it was another one of Ford's creation. It's like, oh, so I didn't actually kill my daughter. But now it's like him being like, no, did I kill my daughter? I didn't. No, that really was me killing my daughter. So, but it's like, it wasn't my fault, you know. And that was that whole thing of and I like, because obviously it's messing with his head, because it's like, was it your choice? Either you are an evil person and you killed your daughter, or you're someone that doesn't have complete control and you are a slave. You can't have both. It's either one or the other. And I was like, and for William, someone who's always thought he was so in control, that he always thought that he saw the game for what it was, but now it seems like, someone who always seemed like, oh, I'm getting to the center of the maze. I found my way out of the maze. But it's just like, like I said, he just thought he was so aware of everything, and now he's questioning his own sanity of and he kept being like, you're not real, I'm real, I know I'm real. But which is, I wasn't, obviously I didn't review season 2, so I didn't get to talk about this, but the actress who plays his daughter Emily, I know from the TV show Evil, because I actually saw Evil before because I only recently watched season 1 and season 2. So when I saw season 2 of Westworld, and I saw that actress playing his daughter, I was like, hey, that's the actress who plays Kristen on Evil. Which, side note, if you've not seen Evil, it's a really, really good show. I don't know where you tracked down season 1. I would assume CBS All Access. I wouldn't know. I don't have CBS All Access, but I assume maybe that's where you find all the episodes. I don't know, but it's a really good show. I'm really excited for season 2. But regardless, going on a tangent and all that. And once again, I like that because he's losing his damn mind. You don't know what's real, because obviously he is trashing the place, but then he wakes up in a tub, and it's like, huh? So did you actually climb into that tub? I assume that is real, and because the floor is covered in water, it's but that's the thing, his mind is so broken and fractured, you don't know what's real and what's not. And then I'm like, man, I was like, this season's full of people having an identity crisis. And I'm like, well, to be fair, I was like, yeah, that's the entire show and its antithesis. The whole show is kind of built off an identity crisis, on every lane and every level when you break it down and think about it. But it's this is the first time Williams really had one. I mean, I guess you can make the argument back when he was younger, he kind of had a little bit of an identity crisis until he quote unquote found himself and became the William we know, the one that's played by Ed Harris, and not, the younger one that was played by Jimmy Simpson. Regardless, tangents and all that. But I just think it's so interesting. And the one person that's in front of him is Charlotte. And she's like, yeah, I'm pretty real enough to not want a gun put in my face. It's like, yeah, I need you to basically get your shit together, because I need your vote, because Sirach is coming to take over the company. He's like, you wanted all the power, and now you're here asking me for help. You should have been smarter about it and stuff like that, but... So it was interesting, and especially it's like, oh, you're out here shaving yourself. Don't you want to do it? That bathroom is like, no one goes in that room. It's like, oh yeah, of course you wouldn't want to go in that room, which is, I guess that's what kind of shocked him to find himself waking up in there, because it's like, oh, I mean, that could be an argument in itself. Maybe he was trying to kill himself, because that's the place where his wife had killed herself. So it's symbolic there. That could have just been his own mind torturing him. You never know. But the fact of the matter is, and I like who, because at first we still don't know who's in Charlotte, but the fact is, quote unquote, Charlotte Fate. Charlotte is playing that triple double crossing type of situation, because it's like, oh yeah, she's like, oh yeah, Sirach, I don't know we haven't found that mole, even though that she's the mole, even though technically she's not the mole, because original Charlotte, the real Charlotte was the mole, but you're not, but you're filling that role. And obviously Sirach knows about Dolores having the data he needs, but you're playing dumb to William, oh, I don't know about that. Oh, Sirach probably doesn't know about the data, because the data was lost. There's no way to find it, because it's you don't want William to know that you were the mole and everything. So it's it's this game of playing ignorant on so many levels. It's playing Charlotte has to be super hard, because you're lying to so many people, you have to keep so much straight about who knows what and what information not to tell someone else. It's interesting. But obviously Williams coming back to basically help, because he still owns a majority share of Delos, so it's using him as a means of swaying the other board members to kind of sway more, Charlotte's direction, actually more, to help them kind of keep Delos in a situation where they can eventually take the company private. Because I guess it needs to be private so they can do what they want to. Because to be fair, because if it's public, that means people can get their claws and hands in it, and it kind of tampers with what you're doing. So it going private could make sense, because that way you get to do whatever you want to without public eye too much kind of steering into your business. Like, oh, what you up to, Delos? Because obviously Dolores has her own plans for Delos. I'm assuming this all would have stakes containing to like the future of their species and everything, the host and everything. But so that's one avenue of things. We'll kind of circle back to that. Then there's the whole situation with Dolores and Caleb, her kind of getting him a suit and everything. And I thought was kind of interesting, because it's like he has to play the role of being a part of that rich and powerful world. She ends up giving him a suit, and she ends up talking, and I thought it was interesting because she's like, basically they live such a lifestyle and dress a certain way to kind of symbolize like, oh, look at our position and stuff like that. But because of all that, it makes it so easy to fool them, because all you have to do is dress the part, and and act the part. You fit right in without them realizing you're not actually part of that world. And so they go to this dude Michael, because apparently and that's once again that futuristic shit of there's a code in his blood for the bank and stuff like that. So they take it, inject it into Caleb, and then when they show up there, it's like, yeah, we only have 15 minutes before it completely degrades. And you also want to make sure you stay calm, because the faster your heart beats, the more it comes out of your system, which I get. It makes sense, because the faster your heart beats, the more blood is pumping throughout your system, and eventually your blood will get flushed out just because of all the fresh blood being pumped throughout your body. So it makes sense in the grand scheme of things. And I love that and she's like, because if that happens, we go old fashioned, and he's like, what's old fashioned? And then or at least we handle this we handle this the old fashioned way. And he was like, what's the old fashioned way? She's like, I kill everyone. And she said it with such a smile, and you have Caleb looking like, what? Jesus, lady. And that's the sad thing, is we know Dolores would end up killing everyone there. But, it's hard to say whether she is 100% joking, because I think she's joking in kind of like I'd actually do it type of way, But luckily, a little snafu and stuff here and there, but and I guess Dolores didn't think too much of it, because you telling him that is just going to make him more nervous. It's probably get his heart beating more and getting it flushed through his system. But luckily they were able to kind of get through, and they end up draining Liam's account, because Connells, obviously not being really Connells, ends up getting Liam to verify some stuff for the account and stuff like that. And I love it's he's like, oh, we'll handle that later. It's like, either you can handle all your financial stuff and I can balance, I'm totally fine with that, or you can go back to spending your daddy's money as much as you want to, and I'm the one that has to kind of keep shit in line for you, while you go off and do whatever debaucherous stuff that you do. I was like, oh, good. So it's like idiot Liam kind of falls right into their lap, the plan and everything. So they transfer all of Liam's money, so he kind of has none later on, but we'll get to that soon enough. At the same time, we've got everything with Stubbs and Bernard, and I think that's so interesting, because as Bernard's walking by, he sees a kid and it makes him think of Charlie, which is that's still gotta suck, because despite everything, despite knowing what you know, that's still a cornerstone of who you are. That piece of Arnold that you're supposed to replicate, that's still a cornerstone of your story. It's of who you are as a host, so it's going to be triggered every once in a while, so that's gotta suck. And Stubbs is kind of like, yeah, I'm not even at full motor function and stuff like that, so I wouldn't be here, but sadly I'm here. And Bernard's trying to because he's figured okay, she's trying to replace Liam, so all we have to do is get close to Liam and we can shut him down. And Stubbs is like, well, how do we know that works? And Bernard tests it on him and then turns it off. And then Stubbs is like, fuck you, Bernard. Even though I'm like, come on, Bernard. For one, let's not forget, you brought him along, you reprogrammed to be like, yeah, you kind of have to protect me. Even Stubbs had said it, you could have just asked me, and now you're testing it on him. Even I'd be like, oh, fuck you, Bernard. Come on, dude, that's a shitty thing to do. I'm kind of your bodyguard. You're kind of forcing me to be your bodyguard, and you're doing me dirty like that. Super messed up when you break it down like that in the grand scheme of things. So while we have that, we have everything with Maeve and Sirach, and I think we finally have an understanding fully of what Sirach's plan is. Interesting enough, we also get a little world building because she was like, oh, like you brought me to Singapore. If you really wanted to impress me, you could have like taken me to Paris. But for him, it's like Paris doesn't exist anymore. It only exists in his mind because apparently, like, we don't know the circumstances, but Paris got wiped out. And so for him, it's like you and me are very similar in that regard, Maeve. Like, we've both watched a world that we cared and loved about and we knew so well disappear before our very eyes. So for him, the only thing of Paris that exists is what's left in his mind. And so for him, he's like, you know, I'm not looking at you, host, like you, Maeve, nor Dolores. You're not the greatest threat to humanity. Humanity has always been its own greatest threat. So it seems like he's on the lane of like, I'm trying to perfect human beings. I'm trying to make humans, like, it seems like he's trying to create like a utopia, a new future going forward for humanity, because it's like, we keep going down this path, humanity is going to be its own undoing. It already is. But the fact is, it seems like he already has the system and everything, that thing that creates up strategies and stuff like that. That thing is already in the making of like, okay, it's there, but it doesn't have the full picture. It's still missing a chunk. And lo and behold, what's that chunk it's missing? Everything that was connected to Westworld, of studying the guests, their behaviors and stuff like that. Because basically it seems like he's trying to copy humanity, like copy what makes a person. And he's like, he's almost there, but he needs the data from, what would they call it, Section 16. He needs everything from that Westworld project that Delos was working on, that he needs that to kind of perfect it. So once again, I don't know whether it's like he's planning on replacing humans with this more perfected or like, I guess at least breaking humans down enough on a level. I mean, because we already saw it with Caleb of like how much it predicted, like, oh, like 10, 15 years from now, you're most likely going to come here and kill yourself. Like, it already got that much, but it needs that extra layer of what Delos is up to fully push it, to know, like, to be able to break down a human's, you know, conditioning, to be like, oh, this is what this person would do down to a T. So to understand the human behavior, to understand humanity at its, you know, tiniest core, you know, like every little itty bitty detail type of situation. So that's interesting to know what that, because even him bringing it up like, oh, there is no place in this world for you and our species, but you do have your own world, which obviously for maybe she's like, that world is closed off, but it's like, nah. Dolores not only has what I need, all that Delos data from Westworld, she also has a key to that world, so we might as well work together because it works out for both of us type of situation. There was even that situation with that dude, Jiang, and once again, just showing you the levels of technology. Obviously, put those glasses on him, and obviously it kind of puts him in a bit of a simulation. It's like showing him what happens to his family if he works with us, showing him what happens if he doesn't. So it's like, oh, you plan on killing his kids? It's like, no. This world can be cruel, and basically implying that things would just happen. I'm sure there'd be some, but I guess in its own way, it's like based on the data and stuff like that. This is most likely what's going to happen to your family without potential intervention, with or without you type of thing. Whatever the case may be, got what he needed about Dolores and shot him in the head because it's like, oh, he's a traitor. Because even if he doesn't know about, you know, what Dolores really is or whatever, he still is a traitor, and it's everything that's kind of sucky because it's like you're punishing for someone for choosing a side in a war they didn't know was even here in the first place. Like, no one knows this war is happening. And it's also interesting to see, like, you know, and I think that already makes it clear in Maeve's head of like, oh, where things stand, where she stands. I'm like, most likely when this is all said and done, it's like, will he really look after me and like give me what I want? It's like, he's all about getting what he wants, what he thinks is best for humanity. Probably us, probably isn't, even if it's like, oh, send us to our world, I'm sure we're not better for humanity's future and stuff like that. He makes it seem like they're not a threat, could be his undoing. But he's like, oh, like, if you kind of don't want to do what we want to, don't worry. You think we're not going to have like an off switch on you? You might be complex, Maeve, but even we can like shut you down if we need be. So what I also appreciate about this episode too is it showcases like Maeve's abilities and stuff like that. They're still there. Like, it's not like, I mean, to be fair, she was in a simulation, so she didn't have it on, but at least we see there is elements of her power still there of like being able to control machines and stuff like that. But the fact is she was walking by like all those electronic stuff, like the lights and stuff were flickering and the TVs were missing. I'm like, so I guess she was like flexing it a little bit to see what she could do. Because this is our first instances of ever doing anything outside of controlling other hosts, I believe. She's never used it this way before, at least not to my recollection, I don't think. She's never used it in this regard, so it was interesting. First tracking down that doctor, poor dude using that dude's gun to blow his own privates off, then going to the mortician, forcing her to kind of help you, which even may be like, hey, I support a woman trying to run her own business and stuff like that. You know, Maeve knows as a former entrepreneur herself. But ends up getting the mortician to take her to the Yakuza, because obviously her whole thing is about tracking down Dolores. So like the mortician gave her, some blood she needed to be Laura, and then like she pointed her towards the Yakuza so that she could get bodies. We'll get to that. And when she shows up, Maeve using her powers to kind of because some of those have like electrical arms to kind of help, like, or at least like mechanics around the arm, I guess, to help them aim. And she ended up using that against them. Also, I love that like some of her stuff from season 2 carries over, like her using blades and stuff like that. Even at one point, pulling out the sword, I'm like, yeah. I mean, this is kind of the perfect setting for that, considering like the whole feudal Japan area in Westworld she was in, So I was like, oh, that was pretty dope. And then at this moment is when everything gets really interesting, because we have our like 3 different stories kind of collecting together in one moment. Like obviously you have the whole thing with William and Charlotte at the same time. You have Bernard and Stubbs showing up at that party to save Liam from Dolores and Caleb, who showed up. And at the same time, there's also the whole situation with Maeve. So all that's going on at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and skip to it. That reveal was so good. First, it's like Maeve finding out it's like Musashi. I was like, Musashi? I was like, whoa, that's crazy. I was like, holy shit. I was like, I wouldn't have, because I had a feeling like when she was walking close, I was like, it's going to be someone we know, but who's it going to be? Never would have guessed it would have been Musashi. That was nuts. But then part of me, it's like, but then he's talking about, oh, you left us behind. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? And she says, I'm like, yeah, you wanted to stay behind. But even I was like, but that is weird. Would Dolores have been able to go get Musashi? You would have had to kind of go way out of your way to get Musashi. Because it's not like he was with any of the other hosts when they were trying to escape. He stayed in his area, like him and what was her, Akane? Like they decided to stay behind. So I was like, that's why I was like, I was wondering about that. Was it Akane or was the younger one named Akane? I'm blanking because it's been a little while now. I can't remember. Yeah, the younger one was Sakura. Akane was the older, kind of older sister, or guardian or friend, almost like a mother figure. Regardless, going on a tangent and stuff like that. But it's like Musashi, but then she was like, no, you aren't Musashi. At the same time, we had the whole situation with Bernard and Connells, and it's like, you don't recognize me, old friend? And I'm like, I'm starting to piece it together. And at the same time, Charlotte's like, oh yeah, like I was listening to that conversation you have with your daughter. He's like, what? It's like, yeah, I've been spying on you. I mean, I really didn't need to, and it's like, what's this? And I'm like, oh. And then when it gets revealed, it's like, it's like you didn't bring 5 hosts with you. You made copies of yourself. I was like, that's so good. Because my entire time I kept being like, I had a feeling that's who Charlotte was. I was like, is Charlotte a copy of Dolores? Which it makes sense because that's what boggled my mind. Like, was that last episode being like, I was like, who's the person that Dolores trusts more so than anyone else? It's like, of course, the one person you trust more so than anyone else would be yourself, especially because she doesn't have really many allies. Because like because even like her and Teddy's relationship was very complicated in the end because, well, she pushed Teddy to, be something that he didn't necessarily want to be or what he was. So there was that whole lane of things. So people could kind of turn on you, people can betray you, but you can't be betrayed by yourself. But that makes the whole thing of like, oh, which the irony behind the statement of like, oh, like who knows me better than me? Like, considering everything, but I guess it's like, well, just considering the whole thing about being a host and what that means of like kind of knowing yourself. And, she lived so many different lives before and never really knew the true essence of who she was until now. But I guess it's just the irony behind that statement kind of like, but I was like, I had a feeling Charlotte was a copy, but I would have never guessed like Connells or this Musashi. It's like, okay. So there's at least one other person like then, right? No, there's at least like 2 or 3, right? Because Musashi, Charlotte, Connells, that's 3. There's at least 2 more out there, at the very least, of not unless that's not counting the one in Charlotte, because if it's not counting the one in Charlotte, there's at least 3 more that she might have already implanted or she might not have used yet. And we'll kind of have to wait and see. But I was like, I love that reveal. I was like, that's so good. And it kind of hitting different characters in different ways, And so the whole Maeve situation was crazy, like that little fight and everything, which I'm like, yeah. Once again, if you don't know this about me, I love swords. Swords are my favorite weapons. I don't know. Ever since I was a kid, I've been obsessed with swords. And like samurais, that's my shit. So when like they went to that feudal area in like season 2, I lost my damn mind. I was like, this is sick. This is my shit. So like when they're like fighting, dude, I'm like, hell yeah. Sadly, you know, because I was wondering, because it seemed like Maeve couldn't necessarily use her powers. Maybe it's just because Dolores is a little more complex than any other host. So especially her being like the original host. So it's like maybe her situation, or maybe it's just because Maeve's powers aren't quite like fully like at their match, or maybe like Sirach did something to kind of nerf her ability so it's not too powerful like it was before, or maybe it's just a whole Dolores situation. Maybe when she made copies, she kind of kept Maeve in mind, because it is kind of interesting, because it's like, because even Sirach had said that against Maeve of like, yeah, she brought other people, not you, which is like, well, because she knew Maeve was going to go her own path, so there's no way to guarantee that Maeve would kind of move the way you'd want her to. Because even trying to say like, because you know, Maeve is like, you say that you're doing everything, building a world for people like us, but it's like everything you're doing is for yourself. But for Dolores, it's like, no, basically it's going to take a while, but everything I am doing is moving towards that. But I can't have someone like you, Maeve, in the way. I can't let someone like you be used against me with your powers and everything. So he ends up stabbing Maeve. Well, Dolores ends up stabbing Maeve and is about to cut her pearl out, but obviously Sirach had people tracking her, so I was like, because part of me at first I was like, oh, did this actually happen, or did like Maeve get inside your head and make you see something that wasn't there? I was like, oh no, it actually went down like that. So there's that situation. Then there's the freaking situation with William. I was like, oh, that's so good, especially when she's revealing who she actually is, and then like she's walking away, because talking about like basically saying like, oh, like kind of taunting him a little bit about everything, and then like those guys hold her, and she's, oh my god, he's trying to hurt me, it's like, no, it's okay, I'm okay now. I was like, oh, and it's like, it's make him seem clinically insane. I was like, dude, she set you up so hard. Which you also know, like, I mean, obviously, even without the context of the later parts of the episode kind of filling it in, you knew that was kind of a sweet moment of like, after everything Williams put Dolores through, that was like the biggest middle finger she could give him. Because she even says it later on, like, I told you I was going to watch you basically destroy yourself, and we finally came to that moment. Because for her, you know, it's like, we even see her kind of prick his neck for his blood. So, because now it's like, because he's being locked up, that means the board can basically mean, now like all his voting power goes to her. So it's like, why have William there? Because it's like, the last thing you want is him there, and he could jeopardize everything you're doing. So why not just take all that power from him? And then you have full control of all the power he has, while also removing him from the board. So, and then we see him at the end, you know, trapped in that mental facility. And obviously Dolores, you know, being there, you know, of like, you know, finally asked me the question you wanted to ask me but too afraid to. And he's like, am I me? And she's like, welcome to the end of the game, you know? And it's like, I figured she wasn't going to answer him. It's like, because that's the thing, like, because obviously there's a whole thing of like, he cut his arm open last season because he started questioning, like, is he real after he killed his daughter? And it's like, so it begs a question, like, is that his conscience getting to him? Was that Dolores already messing with him from the beginning? But like, Dolores hasn't run into him since season 2, like near the end of season 2 was like the last time Dolores ran into him. So I would assume this is the first time Charlotte's been around him, but maybe Charlotte's been in contact with him. So it's like, that's the thing, like, has it all been inside of his head, the whole thing? I mean, even this Dolores is like, was that like a last little message that Dolores left when she pricked him on the neck? Was that kind of like a little more of a gloat to kind of mess with him and kind of send him even spiraling more down the lane of craziness? I don't know, in the grand scheme of things, like what that is. I didn't talk about it, but I also love the whole situation between Subs and Dolores. And she's like, you don't, like, this isn't your fight. He's like, yeah, I wish I could have stayed behind, but thanks to Bernard, this became my fight. And she's like, he was like, this isn't personal. And she's like, this isn't personal either. They proceed to fight. I love that the actress who played Haley and the originals, she's over there, and she's like, oh, this is good shit, because she thinks she's so high that she's seeing Laura, but her dude I don't think he's high, but Dolores does walk past him and kind of taps her head. So I'm like, I don't know if that's supposed to mean like, oh, don't worry, you're just high, like, or is this real? Is it not? I don't know what that's supposed to signify, but she kicked Stubbs' ass, so there's that situation. The whole thing with like Caleb obviously having no idea what's going on because Bernard's like, wait, you're working with her? He's like, are you one of us? And Caleb's like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, okay, so there's that. Caleb catching up to Liam, and then obviously him seeing Dolores and her being like, hello, lover, and it's like, dude, so much good shit is going down at the same time. I'm like, dude, because we still don't fully know what it is, full scope of what it is that Dolores is up to. Hell, Bernard doesn't, because he thought he had it figured out. It's like, oh, you want to replace Liam, but it's like, no, you need Liam to stay in the position. You need him as himself for whatever it is that you're planning. So I'd assume this has something to do with his dad. So why else would you, But then again, once again, the question I brought up earlier, who else are you going to replace? Who else have you already replaced? I mean, like the most recent person that she replaced was Connell's, at least that we're aware of. We have no idea when that Musashi situation went down, like her putting herself in Musashi's body, but regardless, that's just a lot of really interesting developments. I'm curious to ultimately see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good